I want to take you through 7 blood markers you should be checking as a man over 35. And today, I want to give you the real information around these markers and why, as a man in 2026, you should be getting them checked properly. My client Martin experienced this exact thing. At 65, he felt broken. He felt down and out, waking up with a fog over his head that never lifted, dragging himself through the day, feeling like a shadow of his former self, in his words, with a belly so bloated, as you can see here, that he'd actually try to avoid eating food at all costs, because every time he did, he just felt heavy and lethargic. The first marker that was out of range when we tested Martin's blood work was free testosterone. We already knew total testosterone was low, but that doesn't give us anywhere near the full picture. Total testosterone gives us a rough baseline androgen availability, but that marker alone isn't all that helpful because it doesn't tell you what's actually available and usable inside the body. Free testosterone is that number. It's the amount of testosterone circulating in the blood that is actually able to act on receptors and cause an effect. Martin's free testosterone was at 0.257 nanomole per liter. Optimal is between 0.55 and 0.85, so he was less than half of the healthy range. It's no wonder he felt exhausted, unmotivated, and living with a non-existent sex drive. The second marker that was out of range was his morning cortisol level. Look, most people think cortisol is bad, but it's actually an incredibly important hormone that drives energy, mood, and alertness, all things that Martin didn't have. And no wonder. When we tested his morning cortisol levels, they were shockingly low, sitting at just 112.7. Where they should be sitting is between 275 and 413. He was at less than half the bottom of the healthy range, and because of this, he could barely get out of bed in the morning because he was so exhausted. Look, guys often fear high cortisol levels as that means they are stressed, but low cortisol is actually far more sinister, because what this means is that someone has been stressed for so long that their adrenal glands, the things that produce cortisol, just cannot keep up anymore. People often refer to this as adrenal fatigue, and it was a clear sign that Martin was right on the edge of a state of burnout that he'd probably have struggled to pull himself out of. The third marker that was out on Martin's bloods was DHEA, another marker that's critical for health and tells a really important story about the health of the body, but that most guys never get tested. DHEA is a precursor hormone tied to things like resilience, libido, and recovery. Without DHEA, we cannot build sex hormones like testosterone. Look, DHEA naturally declines with age, but early drops predict faster biological aging. Low DHEA often shows up as things like low drive, poor stress tolerance, flat mood despite normal testosterone levels, as well as many other symptoms. And the biggest cause of low DHEA is chronic stress, something that we could clearly see that Martin had been suffering from based off other markers we've already looked at. Get this, his DHEA levels were at 3.2. Healthy levels sit between 7.5 and 13.5. No wonder his testosterone was so low and he felt the way he did. We then reviewed C-reactive protein, one of the primary markers that indicate whether there is systemic inflammation inside the body. When inflammation is high, everything in the body will suffer. Inflammation damages the Leydig cells in the testes that produce it, while simultaneously increasing estrogen conversion, which destroys overall testosterone levels. Inflammation also accelerates cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death for men over 40 years old. This is why it's so important. And the truth is, guys, you can be lean, you can lift weights, and you can think you're healthy and still have elevated CRP, meaning you're at risk of all of these things. We see this all the time in client blood work when they first come to us. Martin's CRP was over 6, suggesting systemic inflammation. They should be sitting below 0.55. He was more than 10 times the healthy range. Absolutely shocking and completely missed. The next marker we assessed was apolipoprotein B, the most underrated cardiovascular health marker that never gets tested. Now, listen closely, because this is crucial to understand. LDL cholesterol alone is not close enough to being able to predict cardiovascular risk. It's an indication at the very best. Cardiovascular disease occurs through a process called atherosclerosis. This is where you get plaque buildup inside the arteries, and over time, this creates poor blood flow and in the end, blockages and ultimately cardiac events that are responsible for almost a quarter of deaths globally. Why ApoB is so important in assessing risk is because it counts the number of atherogenic particles, not just how much cholesterol they carry. ApoB is by far the best marker for predicting cardiovascular risk accurately. It's super important that you get tested and pay attention to this marker if you're concerned about cardiovascular health. And you want to keep it below 0.8. But Martin's was in the high risk zone, sitting at 1.26. If ApoB is high like this, your arteries are already developing plaque and you need to intervene fast. Next, we look towards his primary metabolic health marker, HbA1c. This marker indicates where blood sugar levels have been over the past 90 days or so, giving a strong indication of things like insulin resistance and overall blood sugar control. Even mild issues with blood glucose control creates problems with testosterone, inflammation, and cardiovascular health. In fact, chronically high blood sugar and insulin resistance leads to increased ApoB and CRP. And here's the thing, you don't need diabetes to have metabolic suppression. Martin's HbA1c readings came back at 40.1 millimole. This is actually regarded as normal. But in fact, this is high, and it explained clearly why he was up and down with his energy, craving sweet foods all the time, and sleeping so poorly. Healthy HbA1c levels should sit below 34 millimole, and Martin was way off. The final marker we looked at was PSA, which stands for prostate-specific antigen. And yes, you guessed it, this marker helps us to understand if there is anything we need to pay attention to with regards to the prostate. Prostate issues in older men are becoming more and more prevalent, and although it's not necessarily the most accurate marker to assess, it at least gives us a warning if we are at any potential risk. When PSA levels are high, it can mean things like enlargement of the prostate, inflammation of the prostate, or even prostate cancer. In fact, we recently screened a client who had such high PSA levels that we referred him out to his doctor for a full examination, and it sadly turned out that he did have prostate cancer, but fortunately, because we found it early, he's now in the process of getting treatment for it. And all going well, he should be back to his best in no time at all. But when we looked at Martin's PSA levels, they were also sitting high at 4.2, which is inside the warning ranges. Fortunately for Martin, his examination results came back all clear from his doctor, but he was dealing with an enlarged prostate, which is really common. And this was causing him certain symptoms like excessive and painful urination, especially during the night. Generally speaking, we want to keep PSA levels below 2.5 for older men especially, understanding that there is a natural enlargement that comes with aging. Look, men who feel their absolute best will show optimal total and free testosterone levels, balanced cortisol, not high and not low, adequate DHEA to fuel sex hormone production, low inflammation allowing the body to function properly, controlled glucose levels indicating healthy metabolic function, and low ApoB particle number showing low cardiovascular risk. When we test, we check all of these alongside 55 plus markers that are all necessary for optimal health. This level of testing needs to be the baseline in 2026 if you want to protect your health and feel your absolute best as a man over 35. So let's break this down for you. Step number 1, order a full blood panel. Don't cherry pick. You need all 7 together and the rest of the markers. Check the caption for the full list of markers that we test. Step number 2, look for patterns, not isolated markers. In range doesn't mean optimal, and one marker can mean 10 different things. You need the full picture. Step 3, fix the suppressors before enhancers. Lower inflammation, regulate cortisol, and control glucose before chasing optimal testosterone. Step number 4, retest in 12 to 16 weeks. Hormones respond to environment, and although by doing the right things, you'll certainly notice physical changes in your symptoms, it's important to verify changes through testing again. We ran this exact process with Martin 16 weeks later after a biologically designed program, and this is where he's at. Testosterone levels approaching the optimal range, sitting at 21.1 nanomole. CRP now at 0.46, showing no signs of inflammation. HbA1c levels at 33 millimole, meaning no insulin resistance and great metabolic health. DHEA creeping up towards optimal at 6.8, meaning better foundations for androgen hormones. Cortisol now in the optimal ranges in the morning at 287, meaning he now has the energy for the day ahead. PSA levels slightly reduced down to 3.3, which shows lesser risk of prostate issues. And finally, ApoB levels decreased to 0.93, showing improved cardiovascular health. Not perfect, but well on its way. This is what's possible when you test properly and program accordingly. So if you're a man over 35 and you're feeling tired and out of shape, and the only testing you've had is through your doctor, then understand this. You're basically driving with the dashboard lights covered. These 7 blood markers will give you leverage. The full panel will give you certainty, and a systemized process will give you results that allow you to get into the shape of your life regardless of your age. Just like Martin, and all of these men. So thanks for watching today's video. If you found this useful, then please hit subscribe and drop a comment. And if you want a full overview of our blood optimization system and how it all works to get results like this, then please check out the description for a downloadable link to an ebook that will help you remove the guesswork and understand the power of in-depth blood analysis done properly. And if you're interested to learn more now, then continue on to the next video on my channel where I talk about the 5 most important blood patterns every man over 35 must check.